Welcome to the Sacred Window podcast. My name is Christine Devlin-Eck. The Sacred Window refers to the tender, magical, and remarkable weeks following the birth of a baby. A birth giver is forever changed. Recognizing that this time is too often overlooked and misunderstood in our modern culture, we're setting out to be part of a voice for change and growth. We're growing awareness and broadening the reach of conscious postpartum care. Our podcast features friends and colleagues as interviewers. We're a loving community united by a common passion to change the paradigm of postpartum care to one that honors women, birth givers, babies, and families. We're glad you're here.
And I will never be the same again.
Hi there, welcome to the Sacred Window podcast. My name is Christine Devlin-Eck. I'm so happy to be recording this episode today. I just love how organically people come together and, we just know we have a conversation to share. And I'm really happy to invite today three amazing human beings that I'm so honored to be connected with. One of my amazing teammates, Charlotte Senseney-Stearnkind. Charlotte is in San Antonio, Texas. She's our Ayurvedic Touch for Postpartum instructor here at the Center for Sacred Window Studies in our programs. I have Deborah Rose Schoutema here. Deborah is a fashion model and a mom from London, England. She is the founder of Ayurveda Mamma, MAMMA.com. Deborah is one of our alums of our program, and she's just an incredible person who has really combined her work as a model with supporting new moms and recognizing how imperative this postpartum window is, particularly in her work in the fashion industry. And we have Nicole Trunfio here. Nicole is a model as well. She is the founder of bumpsuit.co. She's from Australia, but she lives in Austin, Texas. And it's so beautiful because Charlotte was Nicole's doula when Nicole had her babies, and Nicole, recently reconnected with Charlotte and sort of, bringing the Ayurvedic sort of conscious perspective of postpartum into her work with Bumpsuit. And I just love how all of this, it was around the same time that Deborah and I were talking about honoring the birth body and sort of that transition of being in your body when it's so different during, the weeks and months and years after birth. So everything was just aligned. And I'm so into following that alignment whenever it happens. And so thank you and welcome to all three of you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us. It's a pleasure.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's really great. And I just want to dive right in and invite, maybe Deborah, why don't we start with you? I would love for you to just start us off with, why do we need to think about the postpartum body and how we see ourselves and what we may expect ourselves to look like through the eyes of the world? Where is this duality and how do you feel called to talk about it?
Well, I remember when I reached out to you about this, I just watched a movie. I don't remember which one it was now. I even don't remember the actress, but she's super famous. And in this movie, she had recently given birth 6 weeks ago, and she was already back to work and doing her swimming pool sessions. And she looked like she's never, ever had a baby. And I was watching that movie and I just looked at myself and spotted a moment of weakness there. So I thought, wow, even though I've done so much work to honor the birth body and to give myself time and to heal and to honor my womb for the work that it's done. Even still, I look at her and I feel, oh, wait, did I do something wrong? Is there something I should have done better? Am I exaggerating this? I think that word, exaggerating this, is important for the mind, because as women, there are so many expectations on us. You want to be a mom is maybe the most important title that you'll ever receive. So you want to be a good mom, but you also want to look good. You want to work still, you want to work on your career, and you have all these things and you're juggling with them, and there's this expectation of you just continuing with life. And where I'm from, Holland, women only get 3 months. I think actually in the US is worse, but we get 3 months maternity leave, and then you're expected to be back to work. And I've heard so many stories in my life that people were struggling with breastfeeding, and women would always hear from their midwives that their supply was low, and therefore they would have to supplement with bottle feeding, et cetera, et cetera. And I always thought like, oh, breastfeeding must be impossible. And it was only when I had my own baby with lots of free time afterwards, where I took 9 months off, with like one shoot after 8 weeks, which I should not have done. Anyways, these 9 months off. And I then realized, oh, of course it's going to be hard if you don't give yourself the time to like go into your new chapter and really feel what it feels like and feel your feelings and get to know your new body, because there's so much transformation in there. And yeah, women feel like they don't recognize themselves in their body after they've given birth, because things like even your bones are in a different position, you know, so many things change. And I actually forgot which question I was answering here, but this is just how
it's so true. I think it takes something like 2 years for your organs to return to the place where they were before you became pregnant. Like it's really amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, Nicole, jump in here and share a little bit about, you know, why you feel drawn to this conversation, you know, and how that, like what it has meant for you to become a mother in your industry, you know, especially where there's even more pressure than, you know, for the rest of us who are not in that field.
Well, I think, you know, a way that I can contribute to this conversation in terms of like being a more relatable side, which I really don't share with many people. And Charlotte was with me through, you know, the first half of what happened to me after birth. But, you know, I, you know, have a high profile career, and a lot of people commented a lot on how I bounced back really quickly, the snap back or whatever everyone calls it. But actually my body thing was much deeper and very dark. Internally, I had a home birth, which I love. I still love it to this day, but mine went completely wrong. I'm not like against it, but I definitely had a situation where it would have been better for me to be in the hospital. And that situation led to a plethora of situations, which really impacted everything about how I related with my body, my self-confidence, my self-esteem, intimacy with my husband. I felt like I was, I don't know what the right word is, but I would say butchered, actually. I'm just going to be completely honest. I had like a really bad tear during my birth in a place where most people don't. And that led to so many complications. I had to have multiple surgeries afterwards, and those surgeries became complicated too. And I just really tried to live in my external body and didn't really deal with the internal. So I think that there's two bodies after pregnancy. There's the external and there's the internal. And you know, my experience, I feel like happened to me for a reason, to share with women, you know, because I think that it's not spoken about, you know, really what happens to our bodies at birth enough, you know. And I think we really need to just listen to all of the stories in an open and optimistic way, so we're really prepared for what we're about to go through. I think a lot of women don't share their stories. You know, once I started sharing my story, a lot of women started opening up, and it made me feel a little bit more normal. And like I wasn't the only one that was now abnormal, and I didn't have certain aspects of my body that I really thought that I wouldn't never be without. And so I think it's just, for me, it's always been, you know, I had to hire lawyers at the time, And I had to talk to a male lawyer about what happened to me and share images with a male lawyer based in Texas, actually. So, you know, that was really uncomfortable for me. And he asked me to write a diary about my experiences. And as I was writing this diary, which has now turned into a book, I was like, wow, this is my healing. I don't ever want to get into a court case with anyone or like sue anyone in my life. And maybe that's not why this happened to me. Maybe it's about sharing this experience and helping other women. And so, I just had this experience, which I haven't really fully shared yet. It's taken me, that was my first baby. That's 7 years ago. It's taken me a long time to process, but I will say, you know, the more I do share, the more normal I feel. And also, my second baby was very healing to me and to my body. And so really stepping into that, you know, just having that knowledge and having that female camaraderie around me while sharing and really stepping into motherhood, as you're talking about, Christine, and Deborah, as you guys are talking about, that is really an important thing. I think, you know, we go into this sector of our lives in this kind of novel way. And it's really important to just share that female wisdom about all the things that surround that and relationship with your body, your new body, and how that's going to, you know, impact your life in a beautiful and positive way with this knowledge, you know?
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's a lot. And I think that I know everybody's got their own story, and some of them are, you know, involved in ways that, you know, other people's stories are not. But there's always opportunity for transformation there. And, you know, something that really stuck out to me of listening to you was the idea of these two bodies, you know, an internal body and an external body. You know, and I think the beautiful part of Ayurveda, you know, that Charlotte and our other instructors that we talk a lot about is, you know, there's multiple aspects to healing and to health, and to be able to process trauma or even just process the transformation into parenthood from, you know, a physical sort of external level, while also, you know, embracing the internal transformation is imperative. Charlotte, I'm really curious, you know, from your perspective. So Charlotte and I, you know, are coming to this conversation from, both of us are mothers, but we're also both, you know, caregivers. And so we kind of, you know, have this wider view, although Deborah, you're in this work too. But Charlotte, you know, I'm curious from your perspective, you know, as you're working with, you know, as you were working with Nicole, as you're working with your other clients, you know, how are you sort of thinking and supporting that processing, that like internal and external healing process, and helping people? Because sometimes I think that like transformation kind of blindsides people. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but they, you know, they don't expect it to be such a huge transformation. And then all of a sudden it is, and we kind of feel knocked off our center. So yeah, Charlotte, I'd love for you to speak a little bit about, you know, how that was for you supporting Nicole, you know, maybe people in general, about how can we support that?
Before she starts, also, I just want to clarify, like, Charlotte didn't know about a lot of the stuff that was going on with me because I wasn't even aware, because it was my first time. But I will say she was the only thing that gave me hope every day. And like, without her by my side, I don't know how I would have gotten through what I went through. So
Wow.
she can talk about what we did, but yeah, she was an angel, a blessing.
Thank you, Nicole. So, yeah, sometimes the internal process work that birthing people have to do is so deep that, they can't even share it yet or vocalize it, put it into words. And sometimes it's using my fine feeling senses to just go, okay, something's off here. And what can I do to support what I'm actually seeing happen? So, it was very clear. I see time and time again how much a rich, oily massage can just help restore the system and give a little bit of energy back, where things start to feel a little more normal and the fatigue subsides some. Having also been a birth doula and having supported women through all kinds of births, there are different questions that arise. It's like the cesarean birthers. Oh my God, I've got a scar and a pooch. I have a tear on that scar and an infection. I have to go back to the doctor and get a few more stitches. Or I had so many perineal stitches that they had to shift me to the OR. I can't even sit comfortably. What can I do? And telling people, gosh, get one of those donut things to sit on. It's like, but that's for old people. And I do remember, one woman being surprised at how much lochia, the afterbirth bleeding there was. And then she said, you know what? Screw this. I'm not going to wear the pads. And I got myself these adult diapers and they work just splendidly. So it's kind of funny, the ways that different people go about their postpartum. And of course, there's always the concern about, is my belly going to get flat again? Will I still be sexually desirable? I've had a number of single parents, and they were clearly worried about whether they could ever attract a partner at the time, and it's reaffirming for them that, yeah, it's going to take some time. And maybe there will be a new softness in your belly, not the taut juvenile tummy, but something that feels whole and more expansive. And, if they tell me, because I've also been a prenatal massage therapist, it's like, oh, I'm getting so fat. And no, you're pregnant. Totally different thing. So I always affirm what's happening and that they're not the only one experiencing this particular feeling. So that's what I like to do, talk to them about whatever it is they're feeling and share my own story too. And if there's time, I'll get into that a little bit later.
Yeah, so beautiful. Thank you, Charlotte. I think what I really love about just listening to your voice, Charlotte, is it's just very present. And that creates like a recognition in me that, we're not always going to know, like we don't have that perspective until we move out of our births enough that we can kind of look back in with a clearer understanding. Like you said earlier, Nicole, that while you were going through it, like you didn't even really know, like it wasn't something that you could seek direct support for because you're in the middle of it. And I think that's so important to recognize that our role, as whether we are the birthing person going through it or whether we are the caregiver, is just to be as present as possible. And really being present gives us the opportunity to really process each individual moment one at a time, which then creates an easier job of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, going through whatever our birth stories are, some are very different than others. Just, you know, owning that story, because I look back now and I'm so grateful that that was my birth story, and grateful for where I am now, and really diving into our own intuitions, and having, you know, a community like this is gold, because this is where it's a safe place to talk about these things. It's, you know, sharing wisdom with other women, it's preparing other women, and also relieving other women, and just, you know, being able to go through the process and prepare and also heal and own our birth stories. They make us so much more powerful as women, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm, you know, I think that, you know, the two of you have a unique experience, and that, you know, being in the modeling industry, there's like extra layers of pressure that are coming from the outside, for the two of you and other people who are in that industry. And I know, you know, I know some of Deborah's backstory, which is so inspiring to me in terms of creating what she knew, what you knew, Deborah, was right for you, in terms of basically having to choose between your health and your job. But by sticking with what you knew was right for you, you were able to actually create both of them together. I wonder if you'd be willing to talk about that journey a little bit in this conversation, as a point of expanding into the sort of body pressure conversation, Deborah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was actually in Australia and I was there because I was close to a burnout. So I should have been going to New York for a stay, but my booker said to me, maybe it's better if you go to Australia, get some vitamin D, relax a little bit, less work. So we thought the problem was that I worked a lot, but that wasn't the problem at all. So when I was in Australia, I ordered a shake. It was called Ojas something. And there happened to be an Ayurvedic practitioner there who started to talk to me about this ojas that I was ordering. There was some dates in there and some milk and some cardamom. And I don't really remember the other ingredients, but he told me about ojas and that it means the immune system. And I felt really, really depleted. So we had a conversation there, and it was so inspiring that we had a follow-up after that. And he told me that I was really high in vata, and that's why my ojas was depleted. So he gave me a simple protocol. Actually, it would not have been simple if I wasn't in Australia, I don't think, but because I have more time, and Australia is like has a good morning routine, so it was lots of routine. And after 6 weeks, something happened. I got my period for the first time in 18 months. So I then realized that this ojas, the immune system, is closely related to my women's health and therefore my fertility. And since infertility runs in my family, that was worth a lot to me. So when I realized that this Ayurvedic protocol, that this Vata soothing protocol would help me to get my fertility back, and maybe I would not have to follow my mom's footsteps and her mom's footsteps, because they all did have children, but it came with lots of complications. So I thought, oh, wow, this is definitely worth throwing everything around for. So yeah, I kept on following that, but I also put on weight because that was just necessary for me. I had depleted my body for a very long time because I was, I think, 5 years down the line of my career. So it's like 5 years of lots of cardio. I didn't eat many carbs, whereas my body needs them. My body thrives on them when I balance them well. So I didn't eat carbs, and I was also a vegetarian on top of that, which I learned was also not the best choice for me. Chicken broths, for example, are really good for me. Anyways, doesn't matter. I put on weight. And so I had to leave because my agency had sent me to Australia with specific measurements that I didn't live up to anymore. So there was no work for me and I had to leave. So I came home, and my mother agent, this is what you call someone who first scouted you, so they set you up in other local markets, said to me that it's best for me that she would take me offline until I got back to my previous measurements, because I used to work a lot. So obviously she wanted me back in those measurements. And I said, I'll see what I can do. But deep down I knew I can't do it. I then traveled to India to learn more about Ayurveda, which was the best choice I've probably ever made. But in the meantime, I was also very, very stressed because I was taking all this time out. I didn't really have a backup plan, and I thought I might come back to not having any work, and I really don't know what I'm going to do. Like, do I have to move back to my parents? I really didn't want that, etc., etc. And in the meantime, I also felt deeply for all the girls that I've lived with, because in modeling, when you just start out, you often, when you go to a city, you stay there for a couple of weeks to meet all the clients and see how you can work there, and then you stay in an apartment with other girls that also come and go. So I've lived with so many girls there, and I witnessed so many people that also didn't have their periods like me. And to be honest with you, I even thought this was maybe normal, you know, to be very irregular, just have a missing 4 year, because it happened all the time to people that I knew. So once I learned this, I thought, oh no, like all these women's, their fertility here is like, you know, that's what you can get if you I don't know how to say this in the right words, but yeah, it's your fertility that you can lose here. So I started to write essays to my agency about ojas, what it means and why it's so important, and how that comes often with a little bit of extra weight, because you need a bit more kapha after that, because kapha is very like ojas. And I wrote an essay every day again. It's kind of like just keeping my diary. And I thought, I'm going to send this one day, and I really hope that they will understand, and that maybe it will contribute to the agencies to like a change in this industry. And so eventually, when it was time for me to have a meeting with them, it happened to be right in the same timing that a big casting director, James Scully, went on BOF, Business of Fashion, which is a really big media channel. And he went to talk about abuse of power, and how women in our industry were almost forced to stay girls, so not to grow up, because when you have curves, then that will be between you and your job. And it's not just your job, it's also the job that your agent creates for you. So basically they want you to be like a boy, not many shapes, and how that was detrimental to people's health. And because he said that there was so many stories popping up everywhere. And the same thing happened in Holland, where I'm from, which is also where my mother agent is. And one of the girls that was picked up by the media with her story happened to be also in the same agency as me. So the agency was suffering with what you call like image damage. And so when I had the meeting with my mother agent, I brought this essay, and it was actually their ticket out of this image damage and their way like to solve this problem, to move forward. So they told me, you form a team, find a nutritionist and a psychologist, and set up a support system for new faces, for new girls that just enter the industry. The psychologist can also talk to their parents so that they feel comfortable signing their children with us. And yeah, you'll be paid for this. So they did that. And at the same time, I was also let back onto the board to work. And my career actually went really like much better after that. Not in all of the markets, but in some markets, it was actually better than it's ever been before. And I didn't have to starve myself anymore. And I could also share this with lots of other people. So that's kind of how it unfolded.
The sacred window is an idea that we can all find ourselves in need of during times of our lives where we are tender, in need of extra care, and transforming our understanding of self. The concepts of care we give to new parents can be applied to ourselves in honor of ourselves to build resilience and grace in how we navigate this life. I just think it's incredible to be able to really recognize what is aligned for you, what is your path of healing, and staying true to it, and from there finding an access point to connecting with others who also understand that. And Nicole, it goes back to like when I was listening to you of female camaraderie, but I think there's also like that wider, like when we have other people who are recognizing the same thing and sort of working on something together, or just even if someone feels supported by a community, that's like a major ingredient to change and to healing. So I think, I mean, the story is so inspiring to me. It's incredible.
Also, I mean, I remember that time, Deborah, and I really applaud you for, listening to your inner voice and embarking on the unknown, like listening to your intuition and embarking on the unknown. Our industry is just, it's so cutthroat. It's a really challenging industry, and to have your input in such a profound way is incredible. And also the fact that you found Ayurveda, sharing that wisdom, that is an old wisdom that I feel is starting to resurface in a big way. I love the community you guys are building around Ayurveda, because it's just so important, especially just bringing women together and looking after the health and wellness of women, also men. But I just find it to be so such a profound healing and health journey. Ayurveda, the Vata, the Pitta, the Kapha, all those things that you're talking about, the types of exercise you should do, the types of food that you eat in Ayurveda, the postpartum healing is a profound resource. If you look into Ayurvedic postpartum healing, which is what we developed this compression band. So another thing with body image after pregnancy, or even just generally, is you see a lot of Kardashian style waist trainers that people are wearing. I remember when I was modeling, I bought one in a size extra small and I couldn't put it on. I was like, how do people get this on? It's not possible. And I was tiny, and to go and just get your regular size, and then it just, I couldn't even do it up. It was just not possible. It's really impacting, your own body image. Charlotte introduced me to Ayurveda, and also the 4th trimester, which a lot of women just don't even acknowledge or know about. This is one of the most important trimesters of healing after birth. It's, acquainting you with your new body, eating the right foods, which Charlotte prepares, or a postpartum doula prepares for you, helping mothers help her around the house a little bit. The food's really important. The herbs and the spices that are used, warm foods only, staying in bed for the 2 weeks is a really important thing in Ayurveda and postpartum. And they also have a tradition of binding the stomach. So this is where, the waist trainer, or, these Kardashian style devices have originated from, is like the binding of the stomach, or the corset. This is actually used for a purpose, and I'll let Charlotte talk more about the binding in Ayurveda. But my purpose with Bump Suit was, to empower women. After I had my first baby, we did a cover of Elle magazine, and I took my first baby everywhere with me, everywhere I went. He would come with me, even dinners with friends. My husband was always away, so he was my little homie. I would just go everywhere. He just didn't leave my side. And I had him on a photo shoot one day. I was shooting the cover of Elle magazine, and I had to feed him. So I was feeding him, breastfeeding him. Thank God I got the opportunity to do that. And they were snapping photos. I've known these people since I was 16, my entire life. So I felt really comfortable. They were like a second family. And when they sent me the photos to approve for this photo shoot, they sent me that cover, and they also sent me another photo where we were nude, but we were wrapped in fabric. So I just thought that they needed my approval for the semi-nudity, which wasn't really nudity at all. There was nothing showing, but it was a little bit more exposed. And I think my little baby's little tush was hanging out. I was like, approved, no worries. I'm Australian. We are very free-spirited in that way. And so then I wake up when it's published to news articles, tens of thousands of new followers on Instagram, controversy, all of this because of this cover that came out, because they published the first breastfeeding cover ever. And I was like, what? I was very shocked. And my husband's from Texas, very conservative, had an issue with me breastfeeding in public, like at restaurants and things, which was really weird to me because I'm Australian, so we breastfeed anywhere. Had to have multiple conversations with him about how my perspective was normal and his wasn't, but I also had to compromise because I was living in his place. And when this cover came out, he came and apologized and said, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize how many people felt the same way as me. And I was like, well, if we're sexualizing women's bodies on billboards and, magazines and on TV and everywhere you look, the female body is sexualized, but we can't actually do what it's naturally meant to do, which is feed our children liquid gold, which is actually, a huge, a lot of women can't do that. And if you get to, then it's great. It's a blessing. What world are we living in? And so after that cover came out, I saw my career as something else. I was like, it was the first time I felt like I'd actually done something to help, like probably like you, Deborah. It's like with modeling, it's like, are we doing something for women's body image, or what are we actually doing? Are we just coat hangers? Are we canvases? What are we doing here? And somehow some of us find a purpose that's larger, that really actually can help women. And when I did that, I was like, okay, this is where I feel comfortable in this space, because I've been through a lot through the birth of him, and I'm still going through a lot. And for me, the creation of Bump Suit is to embody all of those things. It's freeing the bump. It's making women feel empowered, showing off their body while pregnant. That's the most beautiful time when to show off your body, is when you're pregnant, instead of wearing these big, like sack-like, clothing, or these clothing that's like butchered. It's like add on all these pieces that are added on, especially for maternity, that you're going to throw away afterwards. We created something that is super comfortable, very flattering. You can wear it pregnant or not pregnant, so you don't have to throw it away. And someone said, of course you freed the bump. You freed, breastfeeding. So of course you're going to free the bump. And I never saw it that way. And the binder, after working with Charlotte and developing, we call the support waist trainer, which is not a Kardashian style waist trainer. It's really mimicking Ayurvedic binding and Ayurvedic healing to support the core, because when you give birth, you have a lot of air energy. Vata is fire, sorry. Pitta is fire. Yeah, you have a lot of Vata energy, air, because when you release, the baby and the placenta and all the fluids, you feel like you're going to fly away. It's like you become super light. So really grounding you with the Ayurvedic diet, and then the compression, the support waist trainer really helps to support the core, help you sit up straight during breastfeeding. It really helps guide all of your organs back into place, and it also just makes you feel like a superwoman, because you feel like jelly after birth. You feel like a blob. So this is a product that really helps empower women in the easiest way we knew how, without having someone come to your house and bind your stomach in the Ayurvedic style. So you really just finding that purpose, through my job, just like you, Deborah, through my job, it really gave me that avenue to do something with purpose.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that story, Nicole. It's incredible to be so unknowingly, having the first cover photo of breastfeeding, what an incredible thing. I'm so happy that you did that, because it still blows my mind how controversial breastfeeding in public is. And it just feels like we need it to happen more and more so that it stops becoming this thing. And I also remember, being out with my first son at a restaurant, and he was hungry, and he was an infant, a brand new baby. And so I was nursing him, and my husband, I could see him. He's like, I don't know if you should be doing that here. Like, it was a thing that he had to like work through. I was like, no, I'm going to feed our baby. Like, I'm not going to go hide in the bathroom to do this. We're doing this here. And he had to like process that too. Yeah, really incredible story. And how I also, something that's like striking this bell for me is like, when all of a sudden your work comes to a point where you see it as something more, it's like the path that you're on, but then all of a sudden you've uncovered a whole new layer of it that brings such drive and purpose to not only you, but it's such a gift to the world, because people will find strength and resonance and encouragement and comfort from what you've been called and given the opportunity to share. It's really powerful.
I think what we're doing here today is just what needs to happen so much more as women together, united. We men have this camaraderie that women have gotten better at, but I think that, we need to just continue to create such a strong camaraderie together, where we're together in this, and really open up these safe places for conversations to share this wisdom and knowledge, and to hear each other, and to heal, and together. This is so important for the future generations, for our sons and for our daughters. We are creating the tone of the next generation. Being a mother is like the most important job in the world. There's so much pressure for women to have a job and to do something else, but actually the focus should be on allowing women to really embody motherhood, and that to be respected more than any other job in the world, because they're raising the next generation. We're more connected to the earth. We're more connected to birth and creation, and nurturing the planet, and nurturing out the planet, and the people on the planet, and the animals on the planet. And if we can really just gang together and bring that nurturing spirit to life as one, I think it will make this world such a better place to be in for everyone,
Hands down, absolutely. Charlotte, I would love to invite your perspective and your thoughts into this conversation, in terms of thinking about, your calling into this work from, a previous career in dentistry. But, I'm also thinking, Charlotte, about your experience becoming a mother, and then being called into birth work later on. And just, I guess your, process of integrating yourself as mother, your body coming into supporting other people. And just in general, where your thoughts have been going as we've been having this conversation.
And so my prior career was in the dental field, and I actually created artificial teeth and taught residents at the dental school how to help people have a better smile. So if I look at it today, it is about image. back then because a great smile could change everybody's persona, really. And a healthy postpartum can also change you for the better. And I think this is actually even true for the supportive partners. The things that they learn. So my own birth, I had I was scheduled for an induction, and then I ended up spontaneously birthing, much to my doctor's chagrin. And because he was in such a hurry, I ended up with a double episiotomy. I honestly don't know how stitching up 2 sutures can take less time. There was nothing wrong with my son, as far as heart tone or anything. But that, of course, left me with scar tissue down there. And then I also had some postpartum difficulty with another tear where I was cut. For the longest time, I could not even remember my doctor's name, totally blocked it from my system. And then I think I gravitated into the body work and then doula work to help heal my own birth. And one of the very healing aspects was when I did a rendition with my doula group up in Austin of Karen Brody's play Birth. And I chose the part of the woman who had an undesired episiotomy. And her cry at the end was, "They cut me. They cut me. My body will never be the same." And it was very healing for me. And I suspect that the other participants also had a very healing experience from that. I know that as a group, it was such a valuable thing to vocalize for our city at the time. So just looking at that, all the things that can happen in birth. And like I said, I just try to make it easier. Put the compassion and love into the person's birth story. And, sometimes they do have to go see a psychotherapist to process through it. And sometimes it's a principle that we call red tenting, where a woman shares her birth story quite spontaneously with another woman, often years later, and it will be so healing. And I think that's one of the reasons, I got into the postpartum too, to really hear the after effects of how the birth was and how you're feeling now about your body and the image and who you are and are continuously becoming and re-becoming. I think that's good.
Amazing. Charlotte, I was really having a response listening to you tell the story about being in that play, and I can only imagine the shift that you experienced, because I'm shifting just listening to you talk about it, and it happened a long time ago. So wow, thank you. Yeah, and one thing that I'm really sitting with right now is that I can't remember the word you used, if it was like re-becoming or reintegrating, or like there's not like this destination that's called like I've processed it, or like I've reached the transformation, and now I am transformed, and that work is done. It's like we get the opportunity to continue to rebirth ourselves all the time, like my births, were processed, and they, my self as a mother has been evolving all these 14 years since my first child was born. And I think it will continue to do so. And I really value that it's a practice, and that it is a process, and that there are new layers of it that I get to discover, and new appreciations about my body that I get to discover now. My youngest is 4 years old. So my body is very different now than it, there were so many years of like pregnant and postpartum. I have 4 children. So I went through a lot of different sizes and a lot of different places, and, this kind of decade, and now I'm still doing something new. And I think what I'm feeling into right here is that we have the power to create how we want to feel about ourselves. And when we get to use that choice to connect with others, to broaden what we see to be as a real issue out in our world, that's like part of the healing too. Like starting the Center for Sacred Window Studies, like teaching this, like going into being, a conscious postpartum caregiver for me was also part of my healing journey with my births, and just feeling uncomfortable with the transition to parenthood, and which I wasn't expecting to even be a thing. So yeah, I guess I'm just really appreciating that idea of it being a continuous journey, and that being able to connect with others in conversation, in purpose, is also just part of that. And we're kind of supporting each other as we all navigate that journey. Something that I'm also thinking about, Deborah, is recently in the talk that you gave to us, our community on honoring the birth body, just an incredibly well thought out series of practices that I know I could tell as you were talking about them that it was deeply personal for you, that you have incorporated these practices for yourself. And that has been sort of the way that you have then reached out to work with other people. But I'm curious if there, are a couple of these practices of, really integrating your healing journey that you'd be willing to talk about here as we bring our conversation closer to a close.
Yeah, I think what really touched me after giving birth is I was really looking forward to have a cycle again, because pregnancy is without menstrual cycle, and it might have to do with the infertility that I feared so much before my pregnancy, that I was really looking forward to having a menstrual cycle again. But also because this cyclic nature that we share as women in our womb connects us much to nature, to the moon, to the earth. And I really love Maya Tiwari and her teachings on Shakti Prana, and on how you can evoke your Shakti Prana. So the energy, the healing, nurturing, feminine, transformational energy that lives in our womb, which is also the place for our subconsciousness, which is why I think is an extra, like an addition, birth can be so traumatic or invasive, or to nurture that by living with the moon and honoring the moon goddess, which is referred to as mother consciousness. And I love that so much, because by really taking the time to honor that mother consciousness, you are also reminded of how powerful your role, sorry, my Dutch, your role is as a mother. Like was mentioned before, yeah, we are raising the next generation, and being a mother is universal and it's ancient. I mean, we've been around for so long, and without us, we wouldn't be here, if that makes sense. So it's really honorable. So there are practices with mudras that you can do, like in your hands in a shape that like resembles a yoni, for example, just to be aware of the Shakti prana, or to meditate on a picture of the mother consciousness. And even if people don't relate to the actual mother consciousness, to the figure, you can make your own picture, or you can even, I love to look at flowers instead. So roses or lavender, like a nice bouquet, and stare at that instead, whichever resonates with you. Yeah, and the practice of giving your breast milk back to earth, I feel also really connects you to that mother consciousness, and how we are giving back to earth and earth is giving to us, and how we are the space holders for that. We have that in our womb. And so when then the womb is soft or squishy around that area, and you realize that it's because you have this role, then it almost becomes, you know what they say, like gray hair are showing your wisdom, then the womb or the squishiness around that is showing you your power, your inner power. So it's really, really potent. I feel that the energy that comes with the practice of just honoring the mother consciousness. And either if you do it in a mantra meditation, or you simply meditate bathing in the moon, or by taking a break when you have your period back, when you're on your period, and just continue to do that throughout your childbearing years. And yeah, the breast milk, giving that back to earth, as well as blood. If you have a moon cup, then maybe you can bleed into the moon cup and give it back to earth, or feed it to your plants. It's just really resembles the cycle that we're in, and we're cyclical. So cyclical, Dutch again. Yeah, so that practice has been very, and still is very dear to me. What were other things that I shared in the community at the time that I feel, well, yeah, it was mentioned before, like sharing the birth story, I feel is really important. I closed off my 4th trimester with a ritual in water to make peace with my birthing process, because my birth was not the way I envisioned it to be at all. And I think a problem is also in the expectations that are there before you give birth, because, you know, I'm like, oh no, I work with Ayurveda, so I definitely have to have a natural birth, and I cannot be transmitted to the hospital at all, because that means I'm failing in, you know, what I'm teaching others or telling others that they can do. So there was like really high expectations and pressure on myself. And I remember the moment that I released that pressure within the birth, I went from, was it 2 centimeters dilation to full there, like the head was coming through within 1 hour, when I released and said it out loud, that expectation that I had and the guilt that I felt by not going by what I wanted to go by. And so after 6 weeks, I did a ritual in the water, and I found that to be very, very healing. Yeah, just to place some significance on the fact that you've done this and you're moving on now. But you're not really moving, I mean, you're not moving on like it's not important anymore, but you give it a place, and it's, yeah, it has a place, it has a time and a place, and it's okay. You've done it, and your baby is here, and yeah, it's quite honorable.
That's beautiful. It's beautiful. Thank you so much, Deborah. Nicole, I'm curious for you in your healing journey, like some of the things that really stick out to you that you feel like have really helped you process what you went through, and maybe what you're still processing. And, you know, if this is a continuing journey, we're all sort of continuing to evolve, and talk about, you know, what have been some of the meaningful things that have changed you and helped you integrate.
Yeah, so it's been really hard for me even to talk about that story that happened, because it was a mixture of like natural occurrences and unnecessary intervention from doctors, and just, you know, a whole bunch of stuff. it's taken me a long time to process, but writing for me, as I said with the book, has been a part of my healing, and a really, really positive, because it's actually, even my midwife that went through the situation with me, she's like, I've delivered thousands of babies and I've never seen anyone experience what you're going through. And it's become a humorous thing. It's like, it's finding the humor in it. It's like, this is life. It's so crazy. It's so beautiful and wild and raw and out of our control, really. And it's kind of, finding a perspective. I come from a place where, I love my mom so much, but she comes from a generation, I mean, you can't even say that because you guys are so aware and conscious, but she just has never really loved herself and been empowered. And that was my kind of genetic DNA growing up. And I've spent a lot of my life trying to empower myself so I can pass down to my children, a sense of self-awareness and empowerment. Because that's why I'm talking about being a mother is such an important role, because whatever demeanor you choose to take on in your life, you're going to really affect everyone around you. It takes one person to affect a whole world. We are that powerful individually, and we have that much power individually. So everyone has that power. Everyone possesses that. We all, it's possible for all of us to make a change that these icons in our lifetime have made. We've seen it happen. So why isn't it possible for another person to do that? In my journey in my life is just to really heal generational trauma, which, a lot of people have, and clear. It's like, I liken it to, I know this is going to sound really dramatic, but I liken it to a curse. When you read a fairy tale and it's like, oh, that family's cursed. I mean, my family's amazing. I love my family. If my mom hears this, she'll just laugh. But I want to heal that generational trauma and give my children the possibility of empowered existence. So the glass is half full. It's not half empty. All of these things that happen in your life that seem challenging and difficult are actually tests to make you stronger. They're blessings, because you will learn so much. You learn so much from times of hardship. These are blessings. Hardship is blessing. It's to have that perspective. And for me, my healing is that. It's like, what is this situation? Because it was so crazy and it was out of my control, and I'm yet to hear anything like it. And I'm just like, it's my blessing. This is my journey, and it's given me so much purpose. And I'm so grateful for it every day, because the reason I'm having this conversation with you guys right now is because I feel so drawn to this topic and to help and incorporate any knowledge as much as I can. As I'm just trying to do whatever little bits I can to help, us bring to light all the things that we go through as women, and to really empower ourselves, not just like, you're amazing and you can do anything, but like, these hardships and these journeys and these experiences we go through are such beautiful blessings and such beautiful gifts. We can learn so much from these things. We can grow, and we can actually improve and evolve. I think that's a huge word for me, is trying to evolve the next generation, not be stuck in the same philosophies and the same routines. It's like, how do we evolve as a race? How do we heal this world and the people in it? What are the steps we need to take to get there? That's really my focus, and all of this healing has incorporated into that focus. If that makes sense. Sorry, sometimes I talk in like riddles.
Nicole, it's beautiful. Thank you so much. Truly, truly, thank you. Charlotte, I would love to invite you to share something that has helped you continue your own transformation as you become more of the mother that you are today and the caregiver in person.
Oh my goodness. That's a big question. I mean, being 64 now, and I received a granddaughter last year. So it's totally opened up a new adventure, because I raised a son and not a daughter. And at the same time, it's like, oh, what kind of counsel can I give here when clearly it's my son and daughter-in-law that are the parents? So I very much look forward to supporting the way she explores the world, and perhaps in ways that I was not permitted to. So for me, it's very much about freeing the spirit when we were so constrained by societal roles, image roles, how we were supposed to be and act and do, and all of this. And I'm just fascinated with all the ways that everybody is gravitating into a more free expression of who they are, and using whatever issues they face. And, sometimes it can be something that's absolutely joyful too, that brings about such great healing. So I've had gobs of experience in my life, and so have many others. So I just look forward to the listening. Fascinated by everybody's perspective here today, and how the conversation actually went different than I envisioned, and that's totally okay. So yeah, so thank you everybody for facilitating this with us today. I mean, we're totally blessed by the ways you've moved your energy out into the world and become shining examples.
Truly, truly. Thank you, Charlotte. Yes, I also want to acknowledge and express gratitude for sharing your vulnerability and talking about your stories that are so intimate and so precious, and carries a lot, a spectrum of emotion. And I just really honor you being vulnerable with us in this conversation, and how that will truly support others who are feeling vulnerable as well. Thank you both.
Thank you so much for having us. I really enjoyed this. I have a question.
Yes.
I just found a poem earlier today, and as Nicole was talking about generational healing, and also Charlotte just touched base on that for a little bit, I found a poem earlier today that resonates with that a lot, and I would love to share it if that's possible.
Please do. Thank you.
Okay, so this really relates, I feel, to the generations of oppression on women and on all the expectations that are put on us. So I will start. She sat in the back, and they said she was shy. Then she led from the front, and they hated her pride. They asked her advice, and then questioned her guidance. They branded her loud, then were shocked by her silence. When she shared no ambition, they said it was sad. So she told them her dreams, and they said she was mad. They told her they'd listen, then covered their ears. and gave her a hug while they laughed at her fears. And she listened to all of it, thinking she should be the girl that they told her to be best as she could. But one day she asked what was best for herself instead of trying to please everyone else. So she walked to the forest and stood by the trees. She heard the wind whisper and dance with the leaves. She spoke to the willow, the elm, and the pine, and told them what she had been told time after time. Then she found a small clearing surrounded by firs, and she stopped, and she heard what the tree said to her. And she sat there for hours, not wanting to leave, for the forest said nothing. It just let her breathe. It's a poem by Beck Hemsley.
Wow, that just gave me goosebumps all over my body. Thank you for sharing that. What a beautiful, serendipitous gift of information, or gift of, wow, that was so beautiful. Blown away.
At just the right moment, on just the right day. It's a signal of alignment once again.
Thank you, universe.
Yes. So thank you all so much. It's been a true pleasure. And I will make sure that all of your information and ways that our listeners can, find more about your work and links to your websites and all of that will be in the show notes, as well as information about, our programs with Charlotte, myself, and we're grateful for all of you who are listening in, who understand and resonate with the importance of postpartum care and nurturing our mothers and truly changing the world with that effort and that awareness. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
How can you bring something sacred to your current window of time? What do you have to offer to someone within their sacred window? We honor you for all you give and for who you are. Thank you for listening. The Sacred Window podcast is brought to you by the Center for Sacred Window Studies. You can visit us to find out more about our online training and mentoring programs, plus resources and products for and about the sacred postpartum window at www.sacredwindowstudies.com. Editing of our podcast recordings is done by Sienna Butler, and our music is written and performed by Sarah Emmett. You can hear more of Sarah's music by visiting www.sarahemmett.bandcamp.com.